State Representative Alan Seabaugh is here. Hey, Mr. Allen, welcome back to KEEL. How are you this morning? A little tired, perhaps?
I'm a little tired. I'm already back in Shreveport. I drove home after the vote last night.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay, so tell everybody, well, it is over. Explain to everybody, because this morning you are the hero of many, and you are frowned upon by a number at the governor's mansion. Tell everybody what you did and why.
Here's one of them. I want to comment real quick on what Jay Darden said earlier. He kept using the word compromise. He kept referring to the compromise bill. And just to lay the foundation, here's where we were. The governor wanted $650 million. The Republicans wanted to give him zero. He keeps referring to the $650 million bill as the compromise. That wasn't the compromise. That was the governor's My Way or the Highway bill. Republicans offered a compromise, which was a $400 million tax increase. Now, I voted against it, but it was a Republican-authored, predominantly pushed by Republican bill. That was the compromise. That was carried by Representative Lance Harris. So the Republicans offered $400 million, and the governor said, I'll veto it. It's $650 million or nothing. So he got nothing. What happened last night is the Republican bill came up with the $400 million, and it was killed. Conservative Republicans voted no, and the Democrats all voted no because they wanted their My Way or the Highway bill.
Oh, boy.
Well, then that one came up about 20 minutes later, and it failed. It got 63 votes. It needed 70. It failed. And what I did, with about 5 minutes left in the session, they tried to bring it up again for a second bite at the apple. They had already had their chance. The Republican bill had failed. The Democrat bill had failed. The will of the body had been made fairly clear in the third session in a row that we don't want to raise taxes. So I went to the floor. I objected to bringing the bill up for a second vote, and I effectively filibustered until midnight so that they couldn't get a second bite at the apple.
What'd you talk about? Did you tell Joe? Because I didn't get to. The video is freezing on the website, so I'm waiting to see it.
No, I didn't say anything profound, and I wish I had, to be honest with you. All I said was we've already tried. We've already voted on this bill that didn't pass. There's no reason to vote on it again. I tried to take questions. Nobody wanted to ask me a question. Everybody was yelling, but I wasn't going to give up the floor until I knew it was midnight. And then when I finally walked away from the floor, I had a couple of procedural moves that I was going to do before we got to the vote anyway. So we weren't going to vote. When I went to the floor, I had plenty of ammunition to run the clock out, and that was my intention because the people of Louisiana don't want a tax increase. I've heard it over and over and over and over. And just so you know, nothing's going to close. This is either the biggest or the second biggest budget in Louisiana history. We have enough money.
But you're going to cut TOPS by 30%. You're going to cut health care. You're going to cut higher ed by $96 million. That's going to hurt people, isn't it?
You got to talk to the governor about that. We appropriated enough money. His priority was putting it all on Medicaid expansion, so that's where he put it. There is enough money to fund all of that. You could, if you look at them, you could cut the Department of Hospitals by 1%, and fully fund TOPS, higher ed, and everything else that everybody's talking about. But the governor absolutely refuses to take even 1% off of health LDH because that's where the Medicaid expansion is, and he's going to live or die on Medicaid expansion, which he did completely unilaterally without the legislature. They're putting people that make enough money that shouldn't be on Medicaid. They're putting them on Medicaid, so people that are truly needy can't get the medical care that they deserve, and it's bankrupting the state, and he refuses to admit it.
You know, Mr. Allen, you had mentioned a couple of seconds ago what you used the term the will of the body in reference to the House and what happened the last few days. We had Jay Darden on earlier this morning, and he said he basically, I know you'll be stunned by this, he disagreed with you, saying it's that the majority of the Senate and the House of Representatives wanted to go with the governor's half penny 7 years, and it's this sort of conclave of what I call those people of no in the House of Representatives, yourself, the Hortons, etc., who are screwing things up. What do you say to that?
Well, it takes 2/3 vote to pass a tax bill. And it takes 70 votes out of 105 members to pass a tax increase, and the closest they could get was 63. So call it whatever you want, but what the Constitution says is it takes 2/3 vote to raise taxes, and they couldn't get 2/3 vote for the Democrat bill, and the Republicans couldn't get 2/3 vote for the Republican bill. So there was no, I mean, the Republican bill was the compromise. We wanted zero, and we're willing to offer $400 million, which is more than half. That was the compromise. Since John Bell has been in office, he has not compromised $1 or 1% on anything at any phase of any of the negotiations. It has been my way or the highway from the get-go. His first year, he got his way. Since then, the House has said, no, we're not going to raise taxes because our constituents back home made it very clear to us that they don't want taxes. I mean, look, Louisiana, a study just came out, said Louisiana has the worst economy of any state in the United States. Our economy has actually shrunk. Our GDP has shrunk 2 years in a row. Yet our government has expanded grown by 5% per year. This is, again, it's either the biggest or the second biggest budget in history. The rate of state spending is going up and up and up, while the population is going down. The economy is shrinking. Our GDP is going down. And every economic indicator shows that the state is going backward, but the governor refuses to learn the lesson of history and still thinks he can tax the state into prosperity. It has never worked anywhere, and it's devastating the state of Louisiana.
Does the governor veto this budget, then what?
And or should he sign it?
He should have signed the first one. I mean, it's a balanced budget. If he does, he will have vetoed 2 balanced budgets. I don't really get that. But what he should have done is signed the first one, and then in the special session just brought a supplemental to fill in the gaps and the holes that weren't filled. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do, and it's certainly the quickest way to go through the process.
Do you think he's going to sign this one? Is there any chance he'll do that, or is he playing sort of this game of attrition?
I have absolutely no idea. I can tell you, if you look up the definition of insanity, it's doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. He's going to call a 7th special session. We raised taxes in 1 special session, and he's going to call a 7th one, and we've told him no for 2 straight years. So you tell me.
So why don't y'all just not show up? Why don't lawmakers just revolt, say we're not coming?
If I thought we could get a majority to do that to keep them from getting a quorum, I would, but that's not realistic. I mean, we do have a job to do. I mean, after the first special, when we didn't raise taxes, there was this big hubbub about saying we shouldn't take our per diem because we didn't do anything. I disagree. I think we did a lot. We kept tax increases from being imposed on the people of Louisiana unnecessarily. There is no reason to raise taxes in this economy, in this environment, with the amount of tax money that is being collected by the state now. There is absolutely no reason to raise taxes. None, except for the fact that you've got a governor whose wish list is bigger than the state of Louisiana can afford.
If the Senate is stuck on a half a penny for 7 years, if the House idea is a third of a penny for 5, is there somewhere between those two that the two sides, i.e. the governor and you guys, can do a deal?
The half and the third is really a misnomer because the difference between the two is not really very much. The difference in the bills was the total dollar amount that they raised. Hidden with, other than the half to a third, was the cleaning of the pennies, the removing of business exemptions and things along that line. That was the devil in the details. It wasn't just a third versus a half. It was $400 million versus $650 million, and because the Senate version changed, it went from a third to half to a third back to half. I mean, the Senate changed it 4 times. The difference was, the devil in the details was this removal of business tax exemptions, which again, when the business economy in the state is struggling like it is because of the policies of this governor, the last thing you need to do is hit them with yet another tax increase. A personal sales tax is probably the fairest thing to do because if you spend more money, you're going to pay more tax. So, and it does. Everybody has some skin in the game. It's probably the fairest thing to do. And if we're going to have a tax, it's certainly the one I would prefer. But the bottom line is we don't need any. The state of Louisiana is bringing in more money than it ever has before. I mean, last year the budget, the fiscal cliff was $1.6 billion. It's come down to $400 million without us doing anything, just simply because tax revenue has come in higher than they expected. The federal tax change resulted in an extra $350 million increase in Louisiana taxes without us having to do anything. The oil is up. That's another one. Oil is trading about $20 a barrel higher right now than the REC is recognizing. And if you do take the old number of $12 million into the state for every dollar that the price of oil goes up, that pretty much takes care of your deficit right there.